A huge, faded, weathered, and empty hull lumbers down the Delaware River, guided by many small tugboats. This grand old ship is beginning its journey to imminent destruction, consigned to the seabed. Former passengers, fans of the famous ship, and curious onlookers gathered on the banks of the river to say their goodbyes. This ship was not only a historic landmark, but the designer's life work, a symbol of American innovation and a key part of the modern shipping world. This ship is the Grand SS United States. America's Flagship began life back in 1894 at a humble shipyard, not as a physical vessel but an idea from her designer. A young William Francis Gibbs, aged 8, stood among the thousands to witness a huge new ship enter the sea. It was a festive sight. The lumbering hull of the steamer St. Louis towered over the droves of spectators. With a series of clatters, bangs, and other shipyard noise, the luminous ship was released from the way and slid gracefully into the harbor at Philadelphia. From that day in 1894, Gibbs formulated an elaborate fascination with the maritime world. From a young age, he collected books, scoured newspapers, and drew drawings of boats and ships. Gibbs was born into privilege. His father, William Warren Gibbs, was a renowned financier, earning them immense wealth. In 1905, William Francis, age 19, was admitted to the prestigious Harvard University for the study of engineering. He left without a degree in 1910 to instead pursue law, attending Columbia Law School. At the request of his father, Gibbs was to study law for the next 2 years. This was not a decision that he preferred to make. Though in every waking hour of pastime at law school, Gibbs studied the ships of the world, collecting and remaking British battleship blueprints. While at law school, William Francis Gibbs returned home every weekend with his brother Frederick Herbert Gibbs. Together in their makeshift attic office, they would painstakingly draft a series of drawings for a proposed 1,000-foot ocean liner, a ship nearly twice the length of the St. Louis. The project had progressed to a point that he left the law firm in May 1915. The next year, the Gibbs brothers would display their ambitious plan to Admiral David W. Taylor and Secretary of the Navy Joseph S. Daniels. The feedback was positive, financing was secured, and a model of the ship was built and tested for functionality. All seemed hopeful, but the dawn of the First World War saw an abrupt halting to the brothers' plans. In 1922, William and Frederick established their own independent naval architecture firm, Gibbs Brothers Incorporated. After the Great War had ended, the United States was left with a massive amount of German war prizes, including many of Germany's greatest liners. The decision was made to transform one, the SS Vaterland, into an updated ocean liner, a crown for the United States Merchant Marine. The ship, which was called the USS Leviathan during the war, was the first major contract the Gibbs brothers would be awarded. The project, to map out every inch of the huge ship and recreate the plans, being held at the German yard Blohm & Voss, in which constructed the ship in 1913. Blohm & Voss demanded $1 million for a set of blueprints. Instead, a drafting crew of 100 to 150 boarded the Leviathan. Following months of backbreaking work, Gibbs and his talented team concluded the drawings. Leviathan was refit and returned to service, soon to be operated by the United States Lines. After the Leviathan, business continued. In the early 1920s, Gibbs Brothers Inc. was awarded another contract, their first major new liner. The ship that would come was called the SS Malolo and would serve for the Matson Line. In addition to William Francis Gibbs' expertise in the design of ships, he was also obsessively fixed on safety at sea. So much so that the Malolo bankrupted her builders, William Cramp and Sons, though the extra precautions did pay off. During her sea trials, the Malolo encountered thick fog, which obstructed vision from miles to just hundreds of feet. The obstructing blanket would cause another ship, the Norwegian freighter SS Jacob Christiansen, to strike the new ocean liner. The damage was compared to the Titanic of 15 years prior, but unlike the Titanic, Gibbs's newest project would remain afloat. The accident brought Gibbs and his firm miraculous fame and many more jobs to come. The Gibbs Brothers company name was changed when architect Daniel H. Cox of Cox & Stevens joined the firm in 1929. From then on, the company has been known as Gibbs & Cox. At the same time the company prospered, the interwar era saw the company design ships such as the SS Monterey, SS Mariposa, SS Lurline of the Matson Line, and the Grace liners SS Santa Rosa, Santa Paula, and Santa Lucia, as well as the Santa Elena. All of these ships would serve in the impending Second World War. Hitler invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, but the United States had already seen the threat of war. Gibbs & Cox had already drafted plans for many military ships, but the war had only boosted this productivity. Throughout the war, the Gibbs & Cox team scrambled to design thousands of warships and cargo vessels, including destroyers, landing ships, minesweepers, tankers, cruisers, and liberty ships. Just before World War II, the firm had also designed another ship, the brilliant SS America, which would bear the striking resemblance to a future running mate Gibbs had yet to design. After the Japanese officials signed the formal surrender documents aboard the U.S. Navy battleship USS Missouri, Gibbs was faced with another challenge. Surprisingly, the massive output of the Gibbs & Cox firm had warranted some additional legal troubles. Many people would accuse the company of war profiteering, a crime if proven true. Fortunately, William Francis Gibbs had attended law school years ago, and the case was dismissed. As the difficulties resolved, Gibbs would finally get his chance, his one attempt to build his lifelong dream, the dream of a superliner that would outpace and outclass the contemporaries such as the Cunard Queens. Ideas were being taken from architecture firms from across the country. Some of Gibbs' biggest rivals, some of which were dating back to the SS Leviathan, even submitted plans. Despite this factor, careful consideration between the drafts would soon conclude, with the plans from Gibbs & Cox Inc. coming out as the winning choice. President Truman convinced, preliminary designs began. The construction contract was awarded to the Newport News Shipbuilding and Drydock Company in Newport News, Virginia, which were looking to fill the empty drydock of a canceled aircraft carrier, coincidentally named the USS United States. The news of the victory would have undoubtedly thrilled the Gibbs brothers, but they would soon find out the project would not be smooth sailing. Amidst the Cold War, it was realized the United States Navy was lacking in some aspects, among which were aircraft carriers and troop carriers. Arguments over the then unnamed project at Newport News began to arise. It was actually possible that the liner would be turned into an aircraft carrier after all, but fortunately for Gibbs, the transformation would never materialize. Instead, Gibbs & Cox were ordered to keep their newest ocean liner under strict Navy protocols that would allow the vessel to be swiftly turned into a troop ship in the event of war. This, in addition to Gibbs' unmatched obsession with safety, specifically that with fire, would cause the new ship to be the safest on the ocean. With work in full swing, the now designated Hull 488's keel was laid. On February 8, 1950, work on the hull followed suit, albeit under great military secrecy. As the first drydock-built ocean liner took shape, designs were being carefully considered at the Gibbs & Cox firm. Type of engines, design of propellers, interior decoration, and others were among the choices to be had. One of these, the design of her propellers, would be handed to the revolutionary female designer Elaine Kaplan, who created a hyper-efficient layout featuring a 4- and 5-bladed configuration. With the hull's construction underway, attention turned to the new ship's superstructure. Conceptual blueprints were carefully drafted, tweaked, and rearranged. A low-lying structure with a long-covered promenade deck was to be built of aluminum, that is. This would create unfathomable weight reduction that would give Gibbs an edge onto the older competition. This revolutionary design feature would prove problematic to work with, as aluminum, unlike steel, could not be traditionally welded. Another problem was the chemical reaction that would come between contact of aluminum and steel. An interesting galvanic reaction occurs, leading to accelerated galvanic corrosion, where the aluminum acts as an anode and deteriorates into a white powdery or gray-black rust. To combat this dilemma, zinc chromate coating, specialized insulating tape, and stainless steel fasteners were implemented. This resulted in a dazzling array of newly developed technologies that pioneered aluminum work. One of the last exterior features to be decided on were the funnels, which were responsible for venting exhaust clear of the ship. A ship's funnels are also the main branding point for imagery of a vessel. Since this new ocean liner was to be fast, a streamlined design was developed. Gibbs spent weeks perfecting the design, and he eventually concocted an interesting teardrop shape topped with diagonal fins that would blow smoke clear of the vessel. The same design was reminiscent on the SS America, which featured a pair much like this new behemoth. Before the superstructure was constructed, all of Hull 4A8's heavy machinery was carefully deposited into the empty hull. Turbines, condensers, fans, pumps, gearboxes, pipes, and even more descended down the void into the engine room for installation. Her engines were comparable to an aircraft carrier's in both size and power. This was also due to the construction in cooperation with the Navy, though no military equipment was used and instead civilian models were placed. The setup featured lucrative safety and functionality like a warship, showing isolated engineering spaces, redundancies, and backups in onboard systems. It was only after the big complex of contraptions found their way below that the towering stacks were erected. The streamlined funnels were the two largest ever built onto an ocean liner. In June of 1951, after a year of laborious work, the huge liner's exterior came to completion. Soon, Hull 488 would face the next construction hurdle, launching day, scheduled for June 23, 1951. The new ship rose up off the dry dock floor. Music filled the air and cheering blasted from the stands. The big ship was met with wild fanfare. 500,000 watched at both Newport News and on live televised broadcast, the first ship launch ever played on TV. The ecstatic crowd quieted as Lucille Connolly, the wife of Texas Senator Tom Connolly, rose to the podium, placed in front of the new ship's bow. A great banner fluttered across the forepeak, in which loomed overhead. Connolly held a bottle of American champagne with two hands by the neck. With a heavy swing of the bottle, it crashed across the point of the hull, christening America's flagship, the magnificent SS United States. After the celebration dwindled, the great new ship was rigged to tugboats and dragged out of the dry dock. It traveled nearby to the Newport News fitting out wharf. This dock would be where the United States would be given her interior, turned from an empty hull to a glamorous superliner bound for the Atlantic. Throughout the entire fitting out process, wood was strictly prohibited, partly due to Navy protocol, but more significantly, William Francis Gibbs was obsessed with fire safety at sea. Because no wood was permitted on the ship, the all-female design firm Smith, Urquhart, and Markwald were employed to decorate Gibbs's masterpiece. The United States would again revolutionize the modern shipping world. New features, lightweight and fireproof, would be utilized. Special fireproof draperies, sheets, cushions, and carpets were created. Such interest with fire safety would push Gibbs and Cox to create a mock-up cabin. They would then douse it in fuel and set it alight. The only thing burning was the passengers' cases. This major improvement in fire safety would also employ the vast usage of asbestos panels, the miracle material of the time. The expansive exterior decks were also fireproofed, being made of green neotex rather than timber planks. There would, rather famously, be two exceptions to the fireproof code. One was the butcher's block in the galley, which was a mandatory feature in any kitchen. The other was the grand pianos, which were originally ordered to be built of aluminum, much like other interior elements. The piano maker, Steinway, argued that the metal pianos would sound inferior to their wooden counterparts. Gibbs retaliated, arguing that the metal ones would suffice. This would supposedly lead Steinway to such extreme extents as to set one of their models on fire, doused with gasoline, to prove that they were safe. Following the spectacle, Gibbs reluctantly agreed. SS United States' interiors were to be the last word in American luxury as well as modernism. The designers utilized geometric patterns and nature-inspired patriotic colors. They intentionally avoided yellowish-green hues, as Markwald famously declared she would not use any colors that reminded travelers of the condition of his stomach. Shiny chrome and colorful artwork would scatter throughout the great interiors of the Big U, as it was affectionately nicknamed. By the conclusion of interior decoration, the firm had formulated a stylish mid-century modern, refined elegance that steered far clear of the Art Deco on pre-war grades. On May 14, 1952, the SS United States was officially completed. With great pride, she set sail under her own power, bound for builders' trials. Though this would not be the last time the SS United States saw Newport News. Onlookers gathered at Old Point Comfort and the Chamberlain Hotel at Fort Monroe to watch the monumental vessel sail past, and this was true for the remainder of her voyage to sea trials. The SS United States briefly stopped to pick up people for the voyage, among which were engineers, shipyard workers, and government officials. No public passengers were allowed since the voyage was shrouded in secrecy. Despite the hundreds of engineers and designers aboard, it was considered bad luck for women to sail on a ship before it's officially commissioned, so no women were permitted on the trials. Once the big ship passed Point Comfort, it steamed out into the choppy seas. So far, the SS United States was performing well. Soon the United States arrived at the testing place, a buoy bobbed in the swell, marking the start of the trial waters. Evaluators from the United States Maritime Commission and the United States Lines tested the ship's endurance, steering, and emergency systems. The ship's strict compartmentalization, designed to combat flooding and immobilize fires, was thoroughly vetted. During the trials, the liner achieved its top speed while generating 241,758 shaft horsepower. Because of the tight secrecy surrounding her Cold War-era capabilities, her full speed and potential was largely kept classified from the public. Despite all the secrecy, it was clear the SS-US had performed outstandingly, but could she beat the speed record? The Blue Ribbon was the award given to the fastest ship on the Atlantic run, currently held by the Queen Mary. After her sea trials, she was handed over to the United States Lines, in which would operate the vessel. William Francis Gibbs would continue to contribute to the ship long after the United States Lines took control. William and Frederick Gibbs would frequently drive to the New York shores to watch their magnum opus steam triumphantly into the harbor. But now, as the ship was delivered, the 40-year adventure to build his great ship had ended. When the gleaming SS United States chugged to its New York pier on June 23, 1952, thousands lined the shores to watch her come in. In a matter of days, the big ship would be charging across the Atlantic, the Blue Ribbon in the minds of all on board. But for now, there was still a lot to do before the fabled voyage. Food, drinks, napkins, silverware, plates, bedding, flowers, cargo, and other things still had to be brought aboard. It was all to be delivered in crates, big and small, to Pier 86, the United States Line's main terminal. It would be 11 days of attentive work to stock up the SS United States on provisions. By July 3, 1952, that project would conclude. Now, after many months of being completed, tested, and traveling, the Big U would finally see her first passengers. It was the day of the maiden voyage, where the ship would be pushed to her limits. Would the Blue Ribbon be won? The first streams of tourists, celebrities, businessmen, and crew must have wondered this as they crossed over the gangways. The hustle and bustle of boarding day was a festive calamity. Droves of visitors scrambled aboard to say goodbye to relatives and family. Crew would always dislike the unorganized jumble of passengers, and visitors would clog the halls. Sometimes, twice as many visitors would be aboard than actual passengers, causing work to grow slower. You can imagine the difficulty of even the passengers trying to drag their bulky trunks down the thin corridors, pushing through the horde of people. But even with this overwhelming crowd, it was still a happy, proud, and hopeful day for the SS United States. The same feeling would hang over all of New York City, especially at Gibbs & Cox. A huge banner would be displayed on the facade of their 21 West Street office. It read, "Good luck, United States." Soon the crew were calling out for visitors, all's to shore that's going to shore. Despite this, hundreds still mingled about the huge ocean liner. A last thunderous bellow from the SS United States horns would force the guests to say goodbye. Once the last stragglers had been sent along, USL's branded gangways were hoisted away, shell doors sealed, the maiden voyage had began. People packed the exterior spaces of the ship, waving handkerchiefs, throwing streamers, and yelling out final goodbyes to the people that lined the pier. Tugs came along the United States with engines thudding to pull it out of Pier 76. The calls from the ship grew distant as the shining black hull pulled away. Minutes of maneuvering by the talented tugs eventually heralded the long-awaited departure. Surely, William Francis watched on with pride, possibly at the pier or from his West Street window, as the SS United States steamed off into New York Harbor. But on board, the events were just beginning. Once the SS United States had passed the Ambrose lightship, the turbines were cranked up to full ahead. Wind whipped down the great ship as she picked up speed. Aboard, betting pools would materialize for the total mileage of their liner each day. But what else was there to do on the big ship? Game courts, a swimming pool, bars, restaurants, a theater, and other things were among the amenities. For the days at sea, many would also find themselves horribly seasick, bound to their staterooms for the majority of the crossing. About 24 hours after passing the Ambrose Light, the number of miles was presented upon the public rooms, 606 nautical miles, at the average speed of 34.11 knots on day 1, 101 nautical miles with an average speed of 35.6 knots on day 2, and on the final day of the crossing, the Big U would make a record 36.17 knots, logging 833 nautical miles. SS United States blasted past Bishop Rock in just 3 days, 10 hours and 40 minutes, cutting a miraculous 10 hours off of Queen Mary's time. The blue ribbon was hers, but would the westbound crossing provide equivalent results? The SSUS slowed to a crawl as she came into Southampton, England, met with great fanfare from Europe. The liner's commander, Commodore Harry Manning, even received word from the Queen Mary's Captain Thelwell. A thorough congratulations was given to Manning and his ship. Days later, following a swift re-provisioning, dropping off of passengers, and a deep cleaning, the big ship was back out on the North Atlantic, this time going for the westbound speed record. And break records she did. The SS United States sailed back to New York in 3 days, 12 hours and 12 minutes, at an average speed of 34.51 knots, beating out the aged Queen Mary by 10 hours once again. Upon steaming triumphantly into New York Harbor, a vast flotilla of boats, big and small, met the United States for the trip up the Hudson River. The Big U had achieved a clean sweep, or taking the blue ribbon on both crossings, west and east. The Great Voyage was celebrated across the country. The Europeans had lost the blue ribbon, but it was well worked for. After the glorious Atlantic victory, the SS United States slowed down to the steady cruising speed of the Cunard Queens. Unfortunately, there would never be another ship to challenge the United States' Atlantic supremacy. There was a new enemy on the horizon. Sadness shrouded the shipbuilding community on that day, September 6, 1967. The world had lost a great man. William Francis Gibbs passed away in New York City due to a combination of reasons. His legacy would prevail in his ship, until she too was forced into an untimely retirement. By this time, the aircraft had matched passenger numbers of the Atlantic Fleet. The numbers soon eclipsed the liners entirely, thus heralding the unceremonious reign of the great ships. As passenger numbers dwindled, some of the great giants were quickly withdrawn from service. Some were sold like the SS America, which was turned into an immigrant liner. Others were sent straight to the breakers, a sad end for the powerful boats that built the world. Throughout the 1960s, a series of strikes would further hamper the SS United States' career, forcing many more cancellations. Plans were floated to turn the big ship into a cruise ship, but the few cruising attempts that did set sail would prove less than profitable. The ship, which was the most expensive to operate, was returned to the Atlantic run in a last-ditch effort to save the United States line's flagship. Miss Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were the only other liners to join the United States during this time. On the 25th of October 1969, United States returned from her 400th voyage and was ordered to start an early scheduled overhaul at Newport News. This move canceled a planned 21-day cruise, although bookings for future voyages were still being made. The same year, she was permanently withdrawn from service, which came as quite a surprise to the crew members. When days earlier they had been serving passengers, they were now left unemployed. The closure was so abrupt, many crewmen were unable to retrieve their belongings from the ship. At the time of her withdrawal, United States had made 800 transatlantic crossings, steamed 2,772,840 nautical miles, and carried 1.25 million passengers. Also in 1969, the Navy installed dehumidifiers to preserve the interiors of the now sealed superliner. But it would still sit idle until well into the 1970s. By this decade, the United States Navy formally retired all of their existing hospital ships. The now laid-up United States was studied for potential conversion into a hospital ship in the early 1980s because of her size and speed. This would allow her to be rapidly deployed to any crisis in need. The USNS United States would have been able to carry thousands of injured people and would have saved many lives. The United States government decided this plan was too costly and no action was taken. Instead of a life-saving transport ship, Gibbs's magnum opus would be sold for $7 million to a group headed by the Seattle developer Richard H. Hadley, who would refurbish it into a floating condominium block. Under Hadley's ownership, the ship was further neglected and her interiors became ruined with rust. In 1984, Hadley sold off the remaining interior fittings to pay off creditors. As a result, any plans of Hadley's to save the ship failed spectacularly, and the aged United States was seized by the government. After many auction cancellations, the liner was sold again to a Turkish businessman of the Marmara Marine Corporation. The president of Turkey would later exclaim that, quote, Marmara Marine had bought the Savarona that was destined for the scrappers, and it got functioning again, and now they have bought the SS United States. This legendary ocean liner will be serving the seas once again. The careless neglect concluded as the SS United States was eased out of the Newport News dockyard, bound for Turkey where she would be worked on. Upon the long voyage's end, environmental activists protested on the very structure of the ship. They said that asbestos fire safety panels within the walls of the vessel were very dangerous, though this claim is highly disputed. Greenpeace activists climb onto the ship, placing banners across the elegant hull. They would force another shipyard in Ukraine to strip the interiors down to the bare metal, safely disposing of the asbestos. After the detour, the Big U was dragged back to Turkey. Due to the forceful removal of the asbestos, Greenpeace had forced her owners into a consistent loss of funding. Sadly, this would lead to the sale and scrapping of the lifeboats and their davits. The company was still out of money, and the United States government seized the SS United States yet again. She was put up for auction. At this point, the SS United States interiors were thoroughly ruined, and nothing was left but stanchions and the decks. Another wealthy businessman named Edward Cantor purchased the SS United States for $6 million. 2 years later, the SS United States Foundation and the SS United States Preservation Society succeeded in having the ship placed on the Register of Historic Places. Under Cantor's ownership, nothing really happened until he passed away. Now, Gibbs's masterpiece had been sold, stripped, and moved numerous times. How she wasn't scrapped during this time is truly astounding. In 2003, the Norwegian Cruise Line purchased the ship at auction from Cantor's estate. Norwegian Cruises intended to restore the ship for service for NCL America, which would cease service in the Hawaiian region. This was a hopeful and feasible plan that saw some actual interest among investors. In late 2003, NCL began an extensive technical review that found the ship was in sound condition, also cataloging over 100 boxes of ship's blueprints. The CEO of the company exclaimed proudly, United States would be retrofitted. The plans changed again. Every year, NCL was losing $800,000 on keeping the historic ocean liner afloat. They soon began accepting bids from scrapyards, signaling for the end of the SS United States. In 2009, a group of preservationists that called themselves the SS United States Conservancy was formed to save the ship by raising funds to purchase her. They won the battle to purchase the Big U in 2011, being endorsed by President Bill Clinton himself. An ambitious new plan was floated by her owners who actually cared about preserving the ocean liner. While purchasing efforts were still underway, the Conservancy put forth a multi-purpose waterfront complex with hotels, restaurants, and a casino along the Delaware River in South Philadelphia, at the proposed location of the stalled Foxwood Casino project. Deals for the actual beginning of the plan started to materialize. These two, like other plans, collapsed. Other schemes, such as bringing the rusting vessel to New York or Miami, were brought to the drawing board. Still, nothing materialized. Between 2012 and 2024, an abundance of ideas were talked about as follows. Save the SS United States campaign in 2012 raised money to keep the ship. These funds dried up in 2014. Enough money to fund the ship for another 6 months was raised, with the hope of finding somebody committed to the project, with New York remaining as one of the likeliest locations. In February 2015, the Conservancy received an anonymous donation of $250,000 towards the planning of an onboard museum. In October 2015, the group began exhausting funds. The Conservancy began exploring possible bids from scrappers. On February 4, 2016, Crystal Cruises announced it had signed a purchase option for redevelopment of the SS United States. On August 5, 2016, the plan was abandoned. On December 10, 2018, the Conservancy announced an agreement with the commercial real estate firm RXR Realty to explore possible options for restoring and redeveloping the United States. A partner company to RXR called MCR released plans for the ship's redevelopment into a 1,000-room hotel, museum, event venue, public park, and restaurant. Frustratingly, the strategies that were set out were ultimately unsuccessful. In 2021, Penn Warehousing, which owned the pier which the SS United States was docked at, doubled the rent. Arguments would ensue. The Conservancy said Penn Warehousing was illegally wanting to evict the ship so the pier could be used for more profitable activities. This led to the Conservancy and Penn Warehousing suing each other. The removal of the United States was ordered by court within 90 days, which was September 12, 2024. On the court-ordered September 12, 2024, eviction deadline, the Conservancy accused landlord Penn Warehousing of sabotaging the ship's relocation. The nonprofit alleged the company blocked an initial sale agreement in an extortion attempt, demanding millions of dollars from the Conservancy and the buyer to profit from seizing the vessel. Consequently, the United States Conservancy petitioned court to extend the eviction. As a result, the eviction deadline was temporarily suspended. Within the months that followed, the Conservancy sought donations or a potential buyer. Florida's Okaloosa County would eventually purchase the historic ocean liner SS United States for $1 million. Devastatingly, this was not to save it or display its history, but for a different, somewhat wasteful purpose: to be sunk as the world's largest artificial reef. Backlash almost instantly soiled the deal, but it still went through. The next year, on February 19, 2025, America's Flagship was sluggishly eased from her longtime berth. The antique ship was dragged out of Philadelphia. The shores of the Delaware River were lined with spectators, many of which had sailed or served on board. Others had driven past the empty boat every day for work or school. The United States would head down the east coast to Mobile, Alabama, a final port of call before the inevitable destruction would commence. During the voyage down south, the coastal places along the way experienced a peculiar tourism boom as people came from across the globe to witness the historic event. The SS United States arrived in Mobile on March 3, 2025, after an 1,800-mile tow from Philadelphia. The ship was docked at the Modern American Recycling Services facility on the Mobile River for a year-long remediation process. This process would strip the United States of all remaining dignity she had left to offer. While in Mobile, the United States boosted local tourism as droves of enthusiasts, including myself, went to see the progress. The work has not gone without opposition. Many organizations claim to protest that the SS United States is still historic, which is certainly a reasonable claim. Okaloosa County says they have no intentions to sell the ship unless a considerable amount of funding were to be generated. In August 2025, the funnel's radar mast and propellers were lifted off and placed at a shipyard nearby. As of October 12, 2025, all fuel, portholes, and windows have been removed. Even though the SS United States no longer belongs to the Conservancy, they still have been promised a museum where the funnels, among other artifacts, will be displayed. The bridge was going to be cut off for this museum, but sticking to the common theme of her career, this effort collapsed. Originally, Okaloosa County were going to destroy their ship in April 2026, but as of mid-2026, she is still here. Delays have still shrouded the operation, but surely the SS United States will end her days at the bottom of the Gulf. A sad end for the pinnacle of American engineering, the life work of one man, and the fastest passenger ship to ever grace the Atlantic swell. This ship is, and was, the SS United States.